Right, I appear to be live here, so I'm going to get going with the next section of this exploration of 3rd edition in D&D. And what we are doing today is one of the, if not the first module or adventure that that was released for 3rd edition, and that was not the Sunless Citadel, as far as I'm aware, but The Burning Plague, which was released on the Wizards of the Coast website shortly after the Player's Handbook was released. So we're going to be going through that, and I'm going to be trying to address some of the issues that were occurring in the previous stream that I did, the previous adventure that I ran. Before I do that, I'm just going to check that the sound levels and everything are working on the stream. Okay, that seems fine. It may be a little bit quiet, but that's unfortunately going to have to stay that way with the current setup that I've got. And I can't imagine particularly anybody watching these anyway, so it's fairly irrelevant. Anyway, we've got here a nice map that I've taken off of the internet to represent the Burning Plague. This is a fairly short adventure designed for first level characters, and I'm hoping with a party of 6 that we'll be able to romp through it fairly effectively, although it is designed for between 4 and 6 first level characters. What I want to focus on this time is, for a start, improving my my party tactics a little bit, if that's possible. Obviously, it might be a bit of a redundant task as I'm controlling the enemies as well. So if I'm tactically inept with the enemies as well as being inept with the player characters, then it doesn't really amount to much. But anyway, I'm going to try and play a little bit better than I did in the previous game. Secondly, I'm going to try and play intelligently with the monsters as well. That includes retreating if necessary. But I'll generally refer to the monster manual description of tactics that were in the monster manual for 3rd edition to see how they're described and compare that to their ability scores to see how they might react. For example, high intelligence or high wisdom creatures might be more self-preserving than those with lower results in those. And finally, what I want to do is be a little bit more free-flowing with the combat, not focus too much on the gridded combat, because it was one of the primary things that I wanted to investigate with this exploration of 3rd edition anyway, was how much do you need to rely on the grid? Now, I know from experience in playing Pathfinder that the biggest culprit of forcing a player to use the grid is that of attacks of opportunity and of flanking. And a lot of the abilities in original 3rd edition, I don't think that flanking and attacks of opportunities play such a dramatic role in the rules and the feat selections as they might do later on, and certainly with Pathfinder. Pathfinder has a lot of feats and abilities that require being completely aware of the positioning of characters, and that gets even more pronounced when it comes to the teamwork feats that were introduced later on, where 2 characters with the same feats could perform some special attacks or defense or whatever, but their positioning was very important in order to actually execute those. So we're going to try and be a little less focused on movement and on positioning here, but at the same time, obviously, we are using a map. So I'll play it by ear. We'll see what happens, and see if I can be less reliant on the grid. What I might try and do is kind of ignore attacks of opportunity unless it's something that blatantly might cause one, because I think that withdrawing from combat, that sort of thing, nobody in the combat would just turn their back and walk away, sort of thing. I don't get the focus on attacks of opportunity, and if possible, someone's going to take a 5-foot step if there is positionings available. If, for example, they want to do a ranged attack in combat. What I want to play around with at some point is this idea of having sort of nodes on the map, approximately 30 feet from each other, and acting as a sort of 30 feet zone. So, for example, if we were to take this room here, we could call this like one node. It's sort of, about 30 feet square. You can represent this by saying, anybody within this is going to be able to attack anybody else within it with some ease. And you base everything on that very abstract form of things being within 30 feet. And then if you were to have this room, for example, you might divide this into 2 sections. This is bigger than 30 feet in the width, but you're only being approximate. You're saying, well, I mean, you could divide the room into 4 maybe, but the idea is that you're trying to make a zone that somebody could easily move within, attack within, and not bother too much about exact positionings, because you can presume that if the dwarf is here, he could quite easily get to here. He could get to here. He could get to here. And the fact that there are tables in the way, you can just say, oh well, these kobolds have got they've got cover. It doesn't matter where the dwarf sort of stands. We'll say this guy's got cover. I don't know if I'm going to try and do that this game. It's something I'm going to be working on. One of the things that complicates it slightly is with doors, where you essentially want to have another sort of node around doorways, because they can be used for cover. The bottlenecks. So as I say, I haven't worked out exactly how I'm going to do that. I mean, in this example, maybe you'd have a node here. You would have a node here at both the doors. You would have a node here. You would have a node here. So you'd be dealing with sort of 4 different areas that creatures and characters could be in. And you can say, if you're in this node where the doorway is, you're getting the +2 bonus for fighting around a corner or whatever. If you are in this node, you're getting the slight cover bonus from tables, regardless of whether you're the kobold or the attacker. But we'll probably not deal with that at this point. And I think also this is going to be the last adventure that I'm going to use a gridded map for. I'll try and do the next one somehow more abstractly, but I just need to work out how I'm going to actually present that information on the screen for anybody to watch. So, having said all of that, just going to check the stream again, which is saying that it's surprisingly not dropping any frames. We'll see whether that's the case and whether anybody's actually able to view this very well. It looks like it's going fine. We will see. So, to introduce this adventure, the characters, after their introductory adventure in the previous session that I did, find themselves at Duvik's Pass, or Dovik's Pass, or however one might wish to pronounce it. The adventurers may have been travelling there or in the area for some other purpose, but as randomly rolled here, I have determined that the adventurers encountered some refugees from the mine around Duvik's Pass, which has recently made the town famous thanks to a profitable vein of silver and other gems. The adventurers encountered these refugees who tell the tale of a cave filled with glittering riches and carrying a powerful curse. While they are mere peasants with no understanding of such things, the refugees are certain that the adventurers might be able to discover the source of the cave's evil and put an end to it. As such, the adventurers travel to the small town of Juvix Pass, where they find more information on recent activities. It appears that within the last few months, that after the great success of the town, thanks to the mining project, a plague seems to have arrived in the town, affecting many of the people. Some of the wiser people in the town think that perhaps it was due to poisoning of the local water source, but others think that it's some sort of curse from the cave itself. Some of the stronger men were sent to investigate the cave to see if they could find the root of the cause, and they have never returned. And at this point, some of the people have been leaving the town, such as the refugees, and abandoning it. So they will be happy for the adventurers to go to investigate the mine. I think that probably the townsfolk, with the amount of silver that they've gotten, would be able to offer some sort of reward for the adventurers to go and find the source of the curse, of the disease. But we'll leave that for later and just get involved in the actual adventure itself. We have got, again, our characters at the top here. Akihito the monk, Fenton the halfling bard, Gothram the dwarf ranger, Yerrick the human cleric, Rinya the elf transmuter, and Valdis the half-elf rogue. So, a cool breeze drifts down from the towering peaks of the Serpent Coil Mountains as you behold the entrance of the caverns. I couldn't actually determine which setting that this adventure was supposed to be for. I know that early 3rd edition was focused on the Greyhawk setting, but I couldn't actually find any reference to this town or the Serpent Coil Mountains in the Greyhawk setting. So maybe they're there and I just missed them, but as far as I know, this is fairly setting agnostic. The frost-rimed ground is littered with tools, picks and shovels, some of which protrude from soft banks of snow. A single darkened shaft leads into the depths of the mine ahead. The dirt path beneath its wooden support structure is covered with stone debris, a few pieces of which occasionally glint with the slightest hint of ore. No light issues from the tunnel. Burnt-out torches are strewn across the floor, their brackets torn from the shaft walls. Behind you, the worn road leads back through the crags to the valley below. Aside from the quiet whistling of the wind, complete silence fills the small clearing within the mountains. So my tactics with this is, with our only character with dark vision, Gothram the dwarf, he's essentially going to be our scout to sort of be ahead of the party, just about 5 or 10 feet ahead of the light of their lanterns to scout a little bit. He's going to be followed by Valdis the rogue, who's going to stay just on the edge of the light, and the rest of the party are going to follow behind at a fairly slow pace. Now, what I wanted to do here was also think about the speed in which characters would explore a dark area. One of the if we were to look at Dungeons and Dragons Basic, the speed in which you explore is extremely slow. But in such a game as 3rd edition, especially when the grid is being used, everybody would move their characters at normal speed. So they would be going 30 feet around, per round, I mean. Now, there is often not very much consideration to how much noise is being made by characters, how difficult it might be to walk through a dungeon, depending on, you know, how even the floor is and such. And if they're going to be looking around and investigating as they go along, what I think that we'll do is, generally when exploring an unexplored area, characters will move at half their speed. And that should really be the half the speed of the slowest member of the party. So both Guthrum the dwarf and who are we missing here? Got Fenton the halfling. Their speed is 20 feet. So we're saying 10 feet per round, which is not incredibly slow in the grand scheme of things. But if they're going at that speed, then what I would allow would be a passive perception and passive stealth sort of. So, for example, Guthrum, his move silently is... So what I would do is make a note that, okay, Guthrum is at the... Or if actually what I'll do is probably make a list of all of their passive move silently. So I'm just going to write this on my paper. Passive move silently. So Akihito, his move silently is +1. So Akihito. So to make a passive score, it's as though they rolled a 10 plus the ability. So his would be 11. Fenton, his move silently is 3. Fenton, so his is 13. Guthrum, his move silently is 3 as well, so his is 13. Yerrick, does he have a move silently written down here? Move silently is going to be -6. So that means we're looking at 4 for him. Rinya, move silently. I find it a little bit difficult to find the skills here. Move silently is +4. So Rinya, his is 14. Valdis, move silently is +6. So that's 16. So there we've got the passive move silently. So we won't worry about hide, because I think that you would still need to actually hide somewhere. And these passive move silently, because you can maybe modify them by -2, -4, something like that, to represent that they might be talking to each other or something like that. But just in general, we're going to have this. And then what we'll do is actually find the average of the scores. So it's going to be 11.8. And I'm actually going to round this normally. So let's say the average is 11. So in terms of determining surprise and everything, unless you have a situation where specifically the rogue is going alone ahead into a room to investigate, he's hiding and moving silently, then you can do a normal opposed roll against the monsters in there. Otherwise, you've just determined a general DC that the monsters need to hit here, DC 11 for the group approaching somewhere. Having said that, I am going to be generally sending Guthrum ahead. The reason why Valdis is not going ahead is that as soon as you introduce light, then it gives us away positions anyway. So Guthrum is our man here, or our dwarf here, and he's going to be doing all of the scouting. So having said that, we could also potentially do the same thing for the spot and the listen checks for all our characters as well. So I'm just going to quickly do that as well, and that way we don't necessarily have to roll each time. Searching, I guess you don't really need to do, because that's a very active thing. So so listen for Akihito is 2. That gives him a 12, and his spot is 2 as well, so that gives him a 12. Fenton, his listen is 13, his spot is 11. Gothram, his listen is 16, and his spot is also 16. Yerrick, listen 14, spot 14. Rinya, listen 12, spot 12. And Valdis, listen 18, spot 18. So let's just do average for each of those. So we've got an average of 14 on the listen, and it's going to be slightly less on the spot, but I think roughly the same. 13.8, we'll just say that's 14 as well. So I would say that that's a useful thing for any DM to sort of keep tabs on, so that you don't have to keep rolling all the time, and you can kind of prepare encounters beforehand in this way as well. You can even take 10 for the kobolds. So I mean, if I go to have a look at kobolds, their skills, they've got listen +2. So we're going to say that they're automatically going to roll a 12 on most accounts. The average move silently of the party is 11. So we can presume that, generally speaking, the kobolds will never be surprised by the players before they turn up. So you can build that into your preparation for the game. Right. After that very long introduction, I don't think there is anything else that I want to do at this point. Tactically, I've only really thought about this positioning of the characters here, and the fact that they'll be walking slowly, taking care and investigating. We're also just going to determine what time of day it is that they enter the mines here. And we're going to say it's about 4 in the afternoon, so quite late. So they've maybe been trekking through the light snow and up towards the mountain in the early afternoon. Right, anything else that I've forgotten? I don't think so. So the tunnel is 15 feet wide and 10 feet tall, and a successful spot check reveals the wooden supports of the tunnel are chipped and torn. Let's do after having worked out all of this passive stuff, what we can say, the average for listen and spot is one thing, but the individuals are more important in this. So we can say that because Gothram and Valdis both have spot scores higher than 15 for their passive, that's 16 and 18 respectively, that they would probably notice this, especially Gothram being a dwarf. So they'll notice that there has been damage due to a recent battle. And I'll reiterate that using these passive scores, there needs to be some kind of punishment or price to using them. Otherwise, the take 10 rule doesn't apply correctly. So the characters must move at half speed when they're exploring if you want to have these passive listening spots to speed things up. The fact that they have a light source means that they can examine the the area more closely and find that there are also areas stained with blood. Aside from the picks and shovels, there is nothing of value in this location. So this mine shaft heads north into the mountain and slants downward at a gradual incline. It extends 120 feet into the darkness before opening into Area 2, which they don't know yet. As there is no light source in the tunnels, adventurers without dark vision who wish to proceed must have some sort of illumination. So, as a bit of background knowledge, the kobolds within the mine slaughtered the last of the townsfolk who tried to escape here. They looted the bodies and hid them away in Area 5A. The corpses were then stolen by a future enemy in this adventure to be used for nefarious purposes. All the characters will be moving at a rate of 10 feet per round. So after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds. I mean, well before that, Gothram will have spotted the room ahead. Would maybe be telling others to stay back without the light source, and he will slowly sneak forward. And at this point, you might be able to actually roll rather than taking 10 for the stealth, the move silently. I'll give it a roll, I suppose. We've got a 19. So that makes 22. So he very sneakily walks up to the room. The tunnel opens into a small, roughly rectangular chamber. Scattered chunks of silver ore surround an overturned pair of wooden carts. The lower half of what appears to be a human body juts out from beneath one of the cart's edges. It shows no sign of movement. Dried blood is smeared across the northern wall in several places. Exits lead to the west and the east. So Gothram is likely to come into the room just to see what he can see. And from this distance, he's not going to be able to witness anything. He might be able to make a listen check. The kobolds would generally be unaware of the adventurers, so they might still be moving around in there, and Gothram might be able to spot one or two passing through. We'll give him a spot check to see. He rolls an 18 plus 6, so he may well be aware that there's some creatures in that direction. The kobolds have not been alerted to anything yet, I think. What we'll do to quickly determine it, we'll go from the center of the room to the center of this room is 60 feet, and then let's give ourselves a 100-foot penalty against the average. We'll say the kobolds can't hear. We won't start working out. I have a spreadsheet for passing listen checks to hear people, because I think it's something that's not really used or investigated very much within the game, is just how much sound would carry within a dungeon or a cave. The same with light. I mean, light in an extremely dark area like a cave where there is absolutely no light at all, it's going to be extremely obvious as soon as any light source comes near enough, especially for creatures that are sensitive to light, like kobolds and orcs. So I don't know exactly how to show that within the game without getting extremely picky with numbers and distances and that sort of thing. So it's maybe another thing that I need to come up with a system for. I've got a vague idea of how to do it, and I think the answer lies in basically most monsters are going to be aware of anyone approaching before they get there. That very few dice rolls are going to be required. But we'll leave it for now. Gothram is going to obviously investigate this and then come back to the party and give them a slight report of what he's found, explaining that there is a room with a bunch of broken objects within it. I think, in fact, I don't know if we're missing a trick here in that there's actually a closed door here. Let's have a quick read. Yeah, there is a closed door, so that does answer some of our questions about whether or not the kobolds and the party would be able to detect anything going on. Let's just put a door there. So Gothram is going to be unaware of any kobolds at all. Having told them that, he'll maybe tell them to come and investigate, but maybe the first thing that he would do is sneak up to the door and do a quick listen check there. He rolls a 6 plus 6 is 12. Kobolds talking behind a door. I am just going to bring up my Excel spreadsheet that I use for listening. So listening, talking. There is a door between, and Gothram's listen is 6. He rolled a 6. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be aware of some creatures behind there. But the rest of the party will arrive and be told by Gothram of the situation, and they will begin making their plans. As they do so, they get a better view of this area, which maybe will be investigated. Looks like I'm maybe having a little bit of trouble with the stream. Well, it seems to be working at the moment, so hopefully this will keep functioning. See, I've dropped about 15% of frames, but once it's uploaded, hopefully this will be okay. And I'll try and improve all of this stuff in the future, just in case anybody actually watches. Gothram tends to discuss plans of attack with both Rinya and Akihito, and Yerek probably, while Valdis and Fenton like to explore and potter around, and I'm going to randomly determine which one of those is going to look at the body. I suppose, I mean, there are 6 of them. I could determine any of them to be doing that. He's the one who's most having some more problems. I don't know how much of this we're going to lose because of the disconnects. Again, it seems to be working, so I'll keep going at this, and hopefully it doesn't crash completely. If it does, I'll record a separate video. So here we're going to be rolling randomly for various decisions that the characters make. We're going to do a wisdom check for Valdis, and the way that we're going to be doing that is the old school way of rolling underneath the ability score, and then sort of doing the best choice based on that. So whether Valdis just goes straight for looting the corpse and trying to find treasure, or whether he takes the time to actually search carefully for the trap, we'll do based on a wisdom check. I've rolled an 8, so that's under his wisdom, so he is going to take the time to actually search carefully before disturbing the corpse. I guess he is at this stage in the adventure where they are still careful. His search is +6. He rolls 20, 26, so he is going to discover the trap. He'll probably mention, hey, there is a trap here, while the rest of them are discussing their plan in hushed whispers. He will, I guess, see where it leads to and potentially find the Thunderstone and advise, well, why don't the rest of the party just stay out of the room for now while he disarms the trap. Okay. His disabled device is +5. We're looking at a DC 20 here, so it's quite a difficult one. But he rolls an 18, so manages to disable the device. And I think in that case he'll probably be able to claim the Thunderstone itself. So I'm going to add that to his character sheet. Thunderstone. I've got various other character sheets aside from the one that was open on the internet page there that you can see. Thunderstone. We're going to say that this is there we go. So he's got 1 Thunderstone. How much does it weigh? It weighs 1. And that will go in his backpack. Having found that the area is now safe, or should be safe, the rest of the party get back to discussing how they're going to attack the room while Valdis and Fenton actually loot this area. They find some chunks of silver ore that can be salvaged and are worth 200 gold pieces in total, though they will need to appraise this first, or use a knowledge mining skill to find their value. So we'll do the appraised check now, just for the just for the speed of it. Does anybody have Appraise? We've got -1 for Akihito. Got +5 for Fenton. Gothram has +2. He'd probably get a bonus from being a dwarf as well. Yerrick's Appraise is +2. Rinya, I think he might be trained in it, but he's only got +3. And Valdis, his Appraise is +1. So Fenton the Bard is actually the most proficient in appraising. So he will try and appraise. So he's got +5 to the result. And I rolled an 11, so that's a 16. It's DC 15 to find its value, so they'll know that they've got 200 gold pieces of silver ore. Valdis, I suppose, will pocket that. I'm going to write down on my sheet of paper. And with that, they're going to decide on their plan of attack. Now that they've got this Thunderstone, maybe they'll actually try and use that in their preparations. Akihito and Gothram will be at the front line preparing for the attack, smashing down the doors and running in. We'll maybe give Akihito the Thunderstone to